He was a millionaire with everything except a family. But when 3 abandoned kids called him Dad and showed him a photo of a woman he once loved, everything stopped. What happened next unraveled years of secrets, shattered lies, and changed 4 lives forever. Stay with this story because the truth, it will break your heart and then rebuild it. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story, it's a deeply human journey about lost resilience and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances and the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now, let's begin. What would you do if 3 identical children stood on a desert road holding a photograph of your face and called you their father? That was the question Lucas Warren never imagined he'd face on a scorching afternoon in Sedona, Arizona. The sun was hanging low over the red rocks, painting the canyon walls in fiery gold, as Lucas drove his luxury SUV down Route 89A. The windows were up, the air conditioning humming, but inside his mind was louder than the road. He had come to Sedona to escape. The endless meetings, the real estate empire he'd built from scratch, the hollow congratulations from people who didn't know him. At 40, Lucas had everything he once believed mattered: money, properties, recognition. And yet, his life had never felt emptier. He wasn't supposed to be on that road that day. His GPS had glitched, rerouting him through a remote stretch just outside town. Maybe that was fate. Maybe some things find us when we stop running from them. Up ahead, something caught his eye. 3 small figures, barely distinguishable through the heat haze, walking along the shoulder of the road. No adult in sight. No sign of a house. He slowed instinctively, unsure why. There was a pull in his chest he didn't yet understand. He rolled down his window. "You kids okay?" he called, trying to keep his voice steady. The children stopped. All 3 turned to face him at once. And for a split second the world stood still. 2 boys and a girl, clearly siblings, maybe 5 years old. They had sun-bleached hair dust on their cheeks and eyes that stopped Lucas cold. Gray-blue, familiar, devastatingly so. The little girl stepped forward. Her lip trembled as she reached into a small, worn backpack. She pulled out a photograph, crumpled, faded, but unmistakable. It was Lucas, standing beside a woman he hadn't seen in over 6 years. Elise Monroe, his first love, his once-in-a-lifetime, the woman who had disappeared without a word. "Are you our dad?" the little girl asked, holding the photo up to the sun. Lucas blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "What did you say?" She clutched the picture tighter. "Our mom said you were a good man. She said you built beautiful things, but you didn't know where to find us." Lucas stepped out of the car slowly. His knees felt unsteady, like the ground itself had turned to air. He knelt eye level with the children. The resemblance was overwhelming: the shape of their chins, the tilt of their eyebrows, even the tiny scar above the left eye of one boy. The same scar Lucas had from a childhood bike crash. "What are your names?" he asked softly. "I'm Mia," said the girl. "That's Mason." She nodded toward the serious boy with crossed arms, and that's Miles. Lucas looked into their faces, his features reflected in miniature, and felt something shift deep inside. "Where's your mom?" he asked, though part of him already feared the answer. Mia's lips quivered. Mason looked away. It was Miles who whispered it. "She went to heaven. 2 weeks ago, she fell while hiking." Lucas's heart dropped. "And your aunt, she said you didn't want us. Mason added, chin-lifting in defiance. "But Mommy kept this picture. She said maybe one day we'd find you." It's a strange thing the way your life can reroute in a heartbeat. Lucas Warren, billionaire loner, emotionally guarded, found himself kneeling on the side of an Arizona road facing 3 children he never knew existed. Children who had walked miles through heat and dust, holding onto a photograph and a sliver of hope. In that moment, something broke open inside him. "I didn't know," he said. "I didn't know about you, not ever. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." Mia looked unsure. "You promise?" Lucas swallowed hard. "With everything I have." He helped them into his SUV, handing each a bottle of water from the cooler in the back. They sat quietly, eyes scanning the car, like small explorers entering a new world. As he drove, Lucas glanced at them in the rearview mirror. 3 small lives. 3 echoes of a love he'd once lost. He didn't have a plan. He didn't even know where Elise had been living or why she'd vanished, or how 3 children could be hidden from him for 5 whole years. But something in him had already decided. These kids were his, and he would find the truth even if it shattered him. They arrived at a modest log cabin tucked near Oak Creek Canyon. The triplets ran inside instinctively, as if their feet remembered what their minds couldn't yet process. Lucas stayed behind, staring at the doorway, where Elise's shadow seemed to linger. He had no words for the grief crashing over him. Only questions. Inside, the air smelled like lavender and old wood. There were pictures everywhere: Elise with the children, Elise smiling at birthdays, Elise on hikes, but not a single image of him. It was as if he'd been edited out of a life he should have lived. Later that night, after a simple meal of grilled cheese and soup, the children fell asleep curled together on the same couch. Lucas sat across from them, a journal in his lap. Elise's handwriting danced across the pages, entries about the triplets, about her fears, about the letters she kept sending him that were always returned. He didn't know who had kept them apart. He didn't know why. But he knew this. The moment those kids looked at him and said, "Dad, everything changed." That's the thing about family. It doesn't always arrive how you expect. Sometimes it shows up with dusty shoes, trembling voices, and a photo you didn't know someone still kept. Lucas had spent his life building homes, developments, skyscrapers. But tonight, watching 3 little humans breathe in sync under a single blanket, he realized he had never built anything this important. The lesson was simple, but seismic. What matters isn't what you've built. It's who you're building it for. As dawn crept into the Sedona sky, Lucas picked up his phone. "I need help," he said into the receiver. "I need to know everything about Elise Monroe. And what happened while I wasn't looking. Because while the children slept, the real story was just beginning. And Lucas Warren had no idea just how deep it would go. The cabin was quiet. Outside, wind rustled the cottonwoods lining Oak Creek, and the occasional cicada buzzed in the distance. But inside, everything stood still, as if time had paused the moment Elise Monroe took her last breath. Lucas Warren stood in the center of her living room. His eyes drifted from one photo frame to the next, Elise cradling a newborn Mia Mason, chasing bubbles in the grass, Miles asleep in her lap beneath a blanket of stars. There was joy in every frame, a soft light in Elise's eyes. But not a single photo included him. It was like he'd been erased. The triplets were napping upstairs. Exhaustion had finally overtaken them, and Lucas didn't dare disturb the fragile peace. Instead, he turned to the cedar chest at the foot of Elise's old bed. The wood creaked as he opened the lid, releasing a faint scent of lavender and cedar. Inside were letters, dozens of them, some bound in ribbon, others loose and folded into worn envelopes. He reached for one near the top. His own name stared back at him in Elise's handwriting. The return address was his former apartment in Chicago, an address he hadn't used in over 6 years. Every envelope bore the same mark, "Return to sender." Lucas read through trembling fingers. They were all love letters, some desperate, some hopeful, others filled with quiet rage or numb exhaustion, but all of them carried the same message she had tried. She had tried to tell him. She had wanted him to know. The weight of it hit like a blow to the chest. Every assumption he had made about Elise walking away, about her wanting nothing more to do with him, gone. Every year he'd spent resenting her for her silence had been built on a lie, and worse, those lies hadn't come from her. He reached deeper into the chest and found a weathered, leather-bound journal. Elise's voice, suddenly alive again in ink and paper, flowed from the pages. October 7th. The babies are teething, and Miles had a fever last night. Nadine says I should stop writing to Lucas, that I'm just hurting myself. But how do I stop? I look at Mason's face and I see him. I still believe somehow he would have shown up if he knew. Lucas turned the pages slowly, as if each word might vanish if he moved too quickly. December 18th. I watched Lucas on the news today. He's breaking ground on a new skyscraper in Seattle. The kids pointed at the screen and said, "That man looks like Mason." I smiled, but inside I was breaking. The entries weren't linear. Some jumped months ahead, others circled back to memories from college or early motherhood. But every entry painted a picture Lucas had never imagined: a woman abandoned not by choice, but by deception. The most chilling detail came in an entry dated just 6 months before her death. Found a shoebox in Nadine's closet. Letters to Lucas, my letters, unopened, hidden. I confronted her. She said she was protecting me. From what I asked, from hope. Lucas closed the journal and pressed it to his chest. He sat on the floor beside Elise's bed and let the grief consume him. It wasn't just about the years he'd missed. It was about the way he'd believed she left him on purpose. The way he'd buried her memory and ambition, thinking it would numb the ache. And all this time Elise had been holding space for him in her words, in her children, in her heart. A creak from the doorway broke his spiral. An elderly woman stood at the threshold. She wore faded jeans, a garden apron, and carried a pie dish wrapped in foil. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said gently. "I'm Ruth Carrington. I live next door." Lucas rose, wiping at his face. "Not at all. Please come in." She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room before landing on the journal in Lucas's hands. "I used to see her writing in that notebook on the porch," Ruth said softly. Elise was kind, strong. Too strong for her own good sometimes. "Did you know she was trying to reach me?" Ruth nodded slowly. "I suspected. She showed me some letters once. Said she never got a reply. I asked if she was sure they were being sent. She trusted Nadine to handle the mail. After the twins were born, Nadine took over almost everything. Elise thought she was helping." Lucas's jaw tightened, but she wasn't. Ruth hesitated, then set the pie down and walked to a small wooden box near the fireplace. "She kept this for safekeeping," Ruth said, lifting the lid. Inside were Elise's hospital bracelets, the triplets' birth certificates, and tucked beneath an old audio recorder. "She used to record lullabies for the kids," Ruth explained. "One night she said, 'Maybe one day he'll hear these and know I never stopped loving him.'" Lucas didn't dare play it, not yet. He simply nodded, throat thick with unshed tears. "Thank you," he said, "for staying close to her, for being here." Ruth smiled kindly. She didn't have many people, but she had love. She gave those children more than I've ever seen a woman give, and I believe she still hoped you'd come. She just ran out of time. After Ruth left, Lucas sat with the triplets' birth certificates. Each listed Elise as mother, father unknown. His chest ached at the word, unknown, as if he had chosen to disappear. He reached for his phone. "Travis," he said when his attorney answered. "I need a full background check on Nadine Monroe, and I want to know what Elise was trying to do with those letters. Anything legal, child support, filings, custody inquiries. Find out if she ever tried to reach me through official channels." Travis paused. "You think her sister might have prevented it, I don't think." "I know." She intercepted the mail. Elise wrote everything down. Lucas ended the call and returned to the bedroom. The triplets were stirring now. Miles sat up first, rubbing his eyes. Mia followed, dragging her teddy bear. Mason, ever the cautious one, watched Lucas from the top of the stairs. Lucas smiled at them. "We're going to be okay," he said quietly. "I promise." That night, he sat outside under the stars, Elise's journal beside him. The wind carried the scent of pine and sagebrush. A coyote howled in the distance, and Lucas whispered something he hadn't said aloud in years. "I'm sorry, Elise. I should have fought harder. I should have looked longer. But I'm here now, and I won't let you down again." Sometimes the greatest love stories don't end when someone's gone. They keep echoing in the people left behind, in the truths that surface, and in the courage it takes to uncover them. Lucas never imagined he'd be sitting in a courthouse in Flagstaff, fighting for children he hadn't even known existed a week ago. Yet here he was, buttoned into a suit he hadn't worn in years, palms sweating, eyes fixed on a door that hadn't opened yet. Behind it sat the woman he once trusted, only because Elise had trusted her Nadine Monroe. She arrived, like she always had, composed, well-dressed, practiced in grace, but something in her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm here because those children are in danger," she told the judge without blinking. "Elise was my sister. I've been in their lives since birth." "This man," she nodded at Lucas without looking directly at him. "He's a stranger, and a businessman with a reputation for disappearing." Lucas said nothing. Instead, he let the evidence speak for him. First came the DNA results, 99.99% probability of paternity. Then Elise's journal submitted into evidence, page after page in her handwriting, chronicling missed letters, attempts to reach him, and the eventual discovery that Nadine had hidden their correspondence. The courtroom fell into a hush as the judge read an entry aloud. March 12th. Mason asked if his dad would ever come find him. I didn't know what to say. I want to believe Lucas would have come if he knew. But maybe Nadine was right. Maybe I was just setting myself up to get hurt again. Nadine's face tightened. Lucas didn't look at her. His focus remained steady on the judge and on the trio of small hands clasped nervously beside Ruth in the gallery. Dr. Avery Lynn Miles's pediatrician took the stand next. Elise brought Miles in regularly, she said. There was always concern about his heart murmur. I recommended a specialist in Phoenix, but the appointments kept getting canceled. Elise seemed confused. I now believe she never knew those appointments were canceled. Lucas leaned forward, heart pounding. The judge adjusted her glasses. And who was listed as the emergency contact for the children, Nadine Monroe? When the private investigator presented bank records, a hush spread through the courtroom like fog rolling in. They showed that for nearly 5 years, monthly deposits had been made to Elise's account money Lucas had sent to their last known shared address in Chicago. Deposits Elise never mentioned, never spent, never acknowledged, because she never knew. Nadine had been cashing them through a shadow account linked to her own name. The judge turned to her. "Miss Monroe, would you like to respond to these findings?" Nadine's voice cracked for the first time. I did what I had to. Elise, she was too soft, too trusting. Lucas would have destroyed her. Lucas finally spoke. His voice was quiet but unflinching. No, what destroyed her was believing she'd been abandoned. The words hung in the air. Ruth took the children out during the recess, but not before Mia whispered something into Lucas's ear. "Are we going home with you?" He didn't answer. Not yet, but he squeezed her hand and kissed the top of her head. In the hallway, his lawyer pulled him aside. "We have enough for emergency custody," she said. "We'll likely get a formal ruling within a week." But Nadine's pushing back hard. She's still arguing moral authority, history consistency. "She doesn't get to rewrite the story," Lucas said. "Not anymore." When the hearing resumed, Principal Hallie from the Triplets School testified. She described Elise as devoted, resilient, and under immense stress. "She once confided in me," the principal said, "that she felt like her past was chasing her. I didn't understand then. Now I do. But it was a final piece of recovered evidence, a voicemail Elise left on Lucas's old business line, that broke the courtroom open. The recording played on the judge's laptop, her expression unreadable. "If you ever hear this, I just need you to know. They're real, our kids. I never meant to keep them from you. I tried, God, I tried, but something always stopped the message. I don't know what's left, but I hope someday you'll forgive me." Tears welled in Lucas's eyes. The courtroom didn't make a sound. A lesson Lucas never wanted, but finally understood, was this: sometimes truth isn't loud or obvious. Sometimes it's buried under years of silence, waiting for someone brave enough to dig. And sometimes the past we think we understand is just a version someone else left for us to find. The judge looked up. "I will deliver my decision after reviewing this in full. But I commend Mr. Warren for his sincerity and the children's well-being in his care." Lucas nodded, though his throat burned too much to speak. As the courthouse emptied, Mia, Mason, and Miles ran to him. "We told the judge we love you," Mason whispered, "even if we're still getting used to it." Lucas knelt down and wrapped all three in his arms. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered, "and you don't have to be afraid anymore." The sun filtered through the canyon walls, casting dappled light across the red sand, as Lucas laid out a checkered blanket near Cathedral Rock. Mia was collecting smooth pebbles by the creek. Mason had brought his journal to sketch birds, and Miles, always the quietest of the three, was crouched near a patch of wildflowers, humming softly to himself. It was supposed to be a day of peace, a break from court dates and documents, just a father and his children learning each other slowly, one shared moment at a time. Lucas unpacked the sandwiches, cut into dinosaur shapes the way Miles liked. Lunch, he called, his voice light, playful. The kids came running until Miles stopped halfway. Lucas saw it happen in slow motion. One moment, Miles was running. The next, he stumbled, his face going pale, body swaying like a sapling in wind. "Miles," Lucas said, rising quickly. And then Miles crumpled. He hit the ground with a soft thud, but the sound echoed like a gunshot in Lucas's chest. Miles, Mia screamed. Mason froze. Lucas was at his side in seconds, heart pounding louder than the birdsong around them. He cradled the boy's small frame, limp, frighteningly still. Miles's lips were tinged with blue, his breath shallow and erratic. Mason call. 911. Now, Lucas ordered, voice shaking but firm. Back at the car, the signal was weak, but somehow the call went through. Within minutes that felt like hours, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with every desperate beat of Lucas's heart. At the hospital, machines beeped steadily as nurses moved around like clockwork. Lucas sat in the pediatric ER, holding Mia and Mason against him. The shock hadn't worn off. Mason kept whispering he just fell over and over. Mia was silent, staring at the floor, fingers clutching the sleeve of Lucas's shirt like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Dr. Avery Lynn entered, her face grave. "Mr. Warren," she said gently, "Miles has a congenital heart condition, tetralogy of Fallot. It's a structural defect. Elise had been managing it with medication, but he's missed several crucial follow-ups." Lucas's stomach turned. "We had no idea," he whispered. Dr. Lynn nodded. "I believe her when she said she tried, but something interfered." Lucas closed his eyes. Not again. Another stolen truth, another gap Elise had tried to bridge while someone else, Nadine, was dismantling it behind her back. "What happens now?" he asked. "We've stabilized him," she said. "But he'll need specialized care, possibly surgery. We're arranging a transfer to Phoenix Children's Hospital." Lucas nodded, too numb to process the details. All that mattered was that Miles would be okay. He had to be. Later that night, sitting by Miles's hospital bed, Lucas watched the small chest rise and fall, wires and sensors gently blinking around him. He reached out, smoothing back the boy's damp hair. "You scared me today, buddy," he whispered. "But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Miles didn't wake, but his fingers twitched slightly in Lucas's hand, and that was enough. The next morning, Nadine appeared in the hallway outside the ICU. "You're not qualified to handle this," she said. "You don't know his needs. You didn't even know he existed until a few weeks ago." Lucas stood his ground. "And whose fault is that?" he said evenly. "Who hid the truth from both of us?" Nadine narrowed her eyes. "You're making emotional decisions. This child needs medical management. Routine, history." Lucas took a breath, steady but fierce. "He needs love, protection, and doctors who actually get to see him because someone isn't canceling appointments behind a mother's back." As she turned to leave, defeated but not done, Lucas's phone buzzed with a message from his investigator, a deleted voicemail recovered from Elise's account. He played it on speaker, letting the words soak into the sterile hallway. "If you get this, please call me. It's about Miles. He's tired a lot, and I'm scared I'm missing something. I don't know who else to ask." Lucas closed his eyes. She had tried again. Love doesn't always arrive in perfect moments. Sometimes it comes in desperation. In the sound of a mother's voice cracking under the weight of responsibility she never asked to bear alone. When Miles was transferred to Phoenix Children's, Lucas rode with him the entire way, refusing to let go of his hand. Mia and Mason followed with Ruth, who had offered to stay until things stabilized. At the new hospital, a team of specialists outlined a planned surgery would be scheduled as soon as Miles was strong enough. Recovery would take time, but the prognosis was good. That night, Mia climbed into Lucas's lap in the waiting room, her eyes glassy with worry. "Is Miles going to die?" she asked quietly. Lucas held her tightly. "No, sweetheart," he said. "He's going to get better, and we're going to help him every step of the way." "But Aunt Nadine said you don't know how to be a dad," she whispered. Lucas's voice caught in his throat. He rested his chin on her hair. "Well, I'm still learning," he said softly. "But I promise you this, I will never stop trying. Ever." She nodded slowly, her small body relaxing into his. And in that quiet, amid the sterile halls and flickering lights, Lucas Warren realized something powerful. Fatherhood isn't about perfection. It's about presence. Showing up, staying, choosing love over fear, over and over again. The courtroom was quiet the day the judge delivered her final decision. Lucas held his breath as the words sank in, full custody granted. There were no cheers, no dramatic music, just a wave of relief so profound it nearly knocked him off his feet. The triplets were officially Warrens now. Their last names were changed, their identities no longer tethered to the confusion and pain of the past. And for the first time in their young lives, they had a home that was built on truth, not secrets. Lucas didn't go back to Chicago. Instead, he sold his penthouse, handed off the reins of his real estate empire to a trusted partner, and bought Elise's cabin outright. Sedona wasn't just a scenic escape anymore. It was home. The renovations came slowly, deliberately. Each child helped design their own bedroom. Mason asked for a star projector ceiling and maps of the world. Mia wanted a butterfly garden right outside her window. Miles, once recovered from surgery, asked for a small music corner where he could play piano like his mom used to. Lucas honored each wish. He brought in a local contractor and oversaw every nail, every paintbrush stroke, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Building for his kids felt different than building for clients. It wasn't about investment, it was about roots. On Sundays, they started visiting Doe Mountain together. They'd carry flowers, sometimes drawings or small stones, and leave them at a simple wooden marker where Elise's ashes were scattered. Mia would often sing softly melodies Elise once hummed. Lucas never pushed words. They just stood together, letting silence say what couldn't be spoken. Therapy helped. Harper Quinn, a gentle and intuitive child psychologist, began visiting the cabin twice a week. Through play and storybooks, the kids slowly opened up about their fears. Mason confessed he still had dreams where Lucas disappeared. Mia admitted she sometimes blamed herself for Elise's death. Miles, though quieter, once whispered to Harper, "I was afraid my heart would stop and no one would know." Lucas listened, not always with answers, but always with presence. He also established the Elise Monroe Foundation, a trust that provided support to single mothers in rural Arizona, especially those navigating healthcare, education, and legal custody issues. He didn't do it for publicity. He did it because if someone had done that 5 years ago, Elise might still be here. One evening, Lucas walked into the kids' room to find them huddled around an old tape recorder. A lullaby filled the space, Elise's voice soft and clear. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Miles looked up and smiled. "We listen every night now. It helps us sleep." Lucas's throat tightened. He sat on the edge of the bed, placing a hand on Miles's small shoulder. "Your mom had a beautiful voice." Mason nodded. "She used to say that even if people go away, their songs can stay." And it was true. Elise's love echoed in the walls of their home in the garden. Mia watered in the stars. Mason charted in the melodies Miles played. Found family doesn't happen by blood alone. It happens in the choices we make every day to stay, to protect, to rebuild. At a community gathering, one Saturday, someone asked Lucas how he'd managed the sudden shift from millionaire bachelor to full-time dad of 3. He laughed gently and said, "I stopped seeing them as a detour and started seeing them as the road." Because that's what love does. It reroutes us. It interrupts the life we planned and offers one we never expected, but ultimately needed. As summer faded into fall, the family hosted a small picnic beneath the stars. Ruth came by with homemade cobbler. Harper brought sparklers. The kids danced barefoot in the grass, and for a moment everything felt weightless. Lucas watched them from the porch steps, heart full. The lesson he'd learned was simple, but deep healing takes time, and family isn't something you're given, it's something you choose, again and again. And sometimes the most broken stories can become the most beautiful ones when love gets the final word. Some stories begin with a whisper. Others begin with a storm. But Lucas Warren's story began with 3 small voices standing on the side of an Arizona highway calling him Dad for the very first time. What unfolded from that moment was more than a reunion. It was a reckoning, a redemption, and a revelation all at once. Lucas, a man defined by skyscrapers, and success found his life flipped upside down by 3 fragile souls and a woman whose memory refused to fade. Elise Munro's love had endured even beyond her final breath. Through hidden letters, old lullabies, and children who carried her spirit in every smile, she reached out from the past, not for closure but for continuation. Lucas stepped into fatherhood not with a plan but with a promise. He promised to stay to protect and to love even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He battled not just for legal rights but for emotional truth. He confronted the lies that separated him from his children and challenged the silence that allowed them to grow up believing he had forgotten. He rebuilt a home not with bricks and budgets, but with bedtime stories, shared pancakes, and stargazing promises. He witnessed the fragility of life when Miles collapsed under a quiet heart condition, one that had been overlooked and neglected. In that crisis, Lucas didn't just become a guardian. He became a safe place, a constant, a father in every sense of the word. And when the dust finally settled, he didn't walk away. He planted roots in the same red-soiled town Elise once chose for peace. He honored her memory not with monuments but with action, with a foundation that now uplifts other struggling mothers, ensuring that no one else has to navigate parenthood alone. But beyond all the heartbreak and healing, what Lucas learned is something profoundly human, that love, real love, is not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about showing up when it would be easier to leave, listening when it would be easier to fix, staying when it would be easier to run. The story of Lucas and the triplets isn't just about finding lost family. It's about becoming the kind of person worthy of being found. So, what can we take from this? In a world where relationships often fracture over pride, where misunderstandings fester into silence, this story reminds us of the power of grace, of patience, of not assuming the worst when someone disappears, and of being brave enough to ask what really happened. It also reminds us that family is not just about blood. It's about who chooses to be there when everything else falls apart, who shows up when it matters, who makes space for your pain and stands with you in it without needing to fix you. In your own life, maybe there's a conversation you've been avoiding, a relationship that needs repair, a truth that needs facing. Maybe, like Lucas, your story has taken a turn you never planned. But maybe that turn is the beginning of your greatest chapter. So, wherever you are, whoever you are, remember this. It's never too late to choose love, to make amends, to become the person someone else needs, not in grand sweeping gestures, but in the quiet, consistent ones. If this story moved you, if it stirred something deep in your heart, we invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful human stories like this one, stories of redemption, resilience, and the kind of love that can change everything. Thank you for watching. Your support helps us bring more light into a world that desperately needs it. Until next time, stay kind, stay open, and never underestimate the power of a second chance.